My greatest fan? He's the reason my parents said no. I discovered only because of a voicemail not meant for me. It was late, the kind of late when the refrigerator hum sounds like a roommate and the street outside our apartment has dissolved into rain and distant tires. I was dusted with flour on my hoodie, had a chocolate smudge on my cheek, and had a spreadsheet on my laptop that made more sense to me than most humans. Starting a micro bakery had gone from daydream to plan to stacks of invoices and permit applications, and I could feel that hum inside, like a low engine. I was tired, yeah, but the good tired, the I'm building a life I want tired. My brother Nate was on FaceTime propped up against a bag of sugar. He was half under the hood of his own life, new job, new condo he was saving for, the part-time MBA classes he wouldn't shut up about, dog named Tucker who made him somehow seem like he had it all together. He was 2 years older and had always been the responsible one when we were children. The one who double-tied my shoes and told me where the brakes were on a bike before I tumbled down the driveway anyway. I'm proud of you, he told me, for perhaps the 10th time that month. Seriously, Em. It's brave. He said it like a blessing, as if he was showering me with safety. I held the phone close to the cooling racks so that he could see the rows of cardamom buns I had just removed. They were lopsided, like art students, leaning, slumped, lovely in their own odd ways. My little entrepreneur, he said, grinning. You want me to talk to Mom and Dad? I know they're worried, but I can get them to see it your way. I remember my heart doing that little pinch of relief. I'd been dragging my feet with my parents. They'd always wanted me to go stable, accounting, teaching, something with a pension, and I'd been doing marketing for a software company for 6 years. Enough money, soul like a dry sponge. Mom was a nurse. Dad worked maintenance at the community college. They saved, they were careful. They'd said they had a little money they could help with if something big came up, school, a house. They never said dreams. I guess it was assumed dreams were supposed to be cheap. You do that, I said, even though he'd always offered. That's the thing about words said with a big brother chest. They're warm even when you don't require them. Of course, said Nate. We're a team. Let me take some of I don't know, the fear. They listened to me. I resented that he said they listened to him in a way that they didn't listen to me. But he was not wrong. When we were kids, Mom would say, ask your brother what he thinks about everything from my prom dress to whether or not I should take AP Bio. He had this voice that made things sound sensible. I had this voice that sounded like someone who put cinnamon on everything. So I let him talk with them. I built my plan like a little city. I had a name, Quiet Hours Bakery, because I loved the stillness of early morning when you can hear dough breathe. I had cost of goods broken down to the gram, a permit binder tabbed in fluorescent flags, quotes for a used Hobart mixer, and a second-hand double-deck oven. I had $12,400 saved up, don't ask how many lattes I didn't buy, and needed another $10,000 worth of equipment to make the numbers work. I did not need a gift. I needed a family loan that I would repay with interest, as we always spoke about. That seemed fair. I took my deck over to my parents one Sunday after church. Dad paused the game when I nervously chuckled. Mom poured the mugs we always drank from, the ones with the faded blueberries, full of coffee. We sat at the kitchen table that served as our family confessional booth. I went through my slides and tried not to sweat through my sweater. Look, I said, waving a page with a silly little bar graph that prompted my dad to exclaim, wow, look at you with the bars. I already have pre-orders. People love the gluten-free olive oil cake. I'm not quitting my job yet. I'm not irresponsible. Mom was holding my hand like I was telling her something about my health. We're just worried, she said. Food is so hard. What if you can't sell it all? People lose interest, you know. The economy. Dad had the look, a skittish deer that's heard a twig snap. It's not the right time, he said, and his voice was apologetic before he even got the sentence out. Maybe wait a year. Save more. Nate had said. This was not the conversation I'd expected. He had said he'd help them see it. The words Mom and Dad were using, right time, economy, were the same words Nate used to shoot down my plans to dye my hair pink when we were children. I filed that observation away like a post-it note. Maybe they were just practical words most adults used. I left with Tupperware leftover lasagna and my smile set like a catalog of teeth. I called Nate from the car. They're not interested, I said, looking at my own reflection in the rearview mirror to see if I looked like someone who was bad at convincing people. I looked like someone who had a sauce stain on her sleeve. Sorry, he said immediately, and then he said, but I see. It's scary. You're requesting a lot. I am requesting a loan we discussed for big life stuff. You're the one who said ask them now. I said you're serious. I said you had your spreadsheets, he told me, as if I were a kindergartner coming back with a diorama. But they're worried, which is understandable. He started sending me articles from then on. Top 10 reasons restaurants fail, why more than half of small businesses fail in year one, a statistic, by the way, that isn't even true in the way it's used, but whatever. Maybe start with pop-ups, he texted. Less risk. I was trying to be a grown-up. People can be cautious without being conspirators, right? But little things kept bugging me. The last time I visited my parents, my mom said to me, "Your brother said you put everything on your charge card. Don't do that." I hadn't said that to Nate. The only person who knew that I had charged the oven deposit to my card as a hold was my boyfriend, Marco, who crosses his heart at small things and doesn't blab. I didn't, I said softly. And I would never. We all nodded at the table like the conversation was a casual game of volleyball that we were keeping aloft. And then a few days later, I was on the phone with Nate and told him I found a cheap prep table on a restaurant supply Facebook page. And he said, "Don't purchase cheap junky equipment. This is why you can't rush." And then that evening, Mom called and said the exact same sentence, "Don't buy cheap tables. Nate says you rush all the time." I started to feel like I was walking through a living room where someone had moved all the furniture 3 inches to the left. Still, he sent me a DM of a local farmer's market. "This could be good for you." He joked, "I'll be your first investor with sweat equity. I'll lick the spoons." He Venmo'd me $42.17 with a note for butter, the way some brothers send beer money. He showed up to my kitchen one Saturday with Tucker, leaned against the doorframe, passed judgment on nothing, and told me, again, "I'm proud of you." And there was the voicemail. It was a stupid, domestic accident. I was at my parents' on a Wednesday night after a dentist appointment in the area, mouth-eating chicken soup, watching Wheel of Fortune with Dad. Mom's phone was face up on the counter because she uses it as a kitchen timer and refuses to silence any notification ever. A voicemail alert came, that little bubble on the screen, and it played itself out without anyone having to press it because she had left the phone next to the microwave speaker, and technology is weird like that. I wasn't prying. I swear I wasn't. But Nate's voice came into the kitchen like he was standing next to the basil plant. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Dad," he said, trying to sound casual, like he was calling from the grocery store. My shoulders dropped. It was just him. "I just wanted to call before Em comes by again. I know you're mad. You shouldn't be. You have to be strong. She won't listen otherwise." There was a little silence. It was like the whole kitchen took a breath. "She's impulsive," he said, his voice dropping into his reasonable tone, the one that charmed school counselors. "She gets all excited and then burns out. You know how she is, like, with everything. The Etsy store, the yoga certification, whatever. I'm just being honest. If you lend her this money, she will fail, and then she'll hate you, and it'll be your fault. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm being realistic, okay? If I had a camera on me, you would have picked it up." Something loosened in my chest. Heat went up my neck, then I got cold as if someone opened the freezer. "I'm going to need you both to help me out with the down payment this spring," he continued, as nonchalantly as if ordering fries. "It just makes more sense. I'm better placed to make use of it and pay it back sooner. Everyone will be better off. So just please keep them in line. Okay? Don't give in because she cries. Love you." I simply stood there, spoon in hand with chicken floating in it like a goldfish. The message ended. The microwave clock flashed 7:19 p.m. The soup smelled of parsley and a life I couldn't live anymore. Dad came back into the kitchen with the crossword. "You want more?" he said, coming to take my bowl. I said I had left something in my car and went outside into the night where the sky was the wrong kind of dark. I sat in my Prius and stared at my own breath on the windshield and wiped it with my sleeve as though I could erase that easily the haze in my mind. My phone lit up with a text from Marco. "How's the tooth?" I typed and deleted. I rehearsed 1,000 different ways to burn the world down and also how to never speak again. I went in then because I couldn't pretend hard enough to remain. "I'm tired," I told my parents, eyes perhaps too bright. "Long day. I'm gonna go." I kissed the air near my mom's cheek and missed. I think she knew something. Moms always know when something trembles inside you. The next day, I stopped by my mom's to drop off Tupperware, which is code for "please check your phone," as she still needed me to show her how to create a contact. I asked to cast her phone to the television so that she could look at the photos from my friend's baby shower. I am embarrassed about this. I also know that if you've ever felt a thin layer of love peel back all at once, you've done something messy to get the truth. On her phone, buried in messages and forwarded emails, there it was, my pitch deck forwarded from Nate with the subject line, "Talk her down." An email thread with bullet points in his voice. Problem: M is not financially disciplined enough for this. Solution: postpone 12 to 18 months. She'll have lost interest by then. Then a link to Why Restaurants Fail that I was familiar with from my texts with him. Then, and this is the part that made everything click into place and everything fall apart simultaneously, a line. Don't use the helic on this. We need it for the spring. We need it. I don't remember the next hour precisely. I remember walking down my parents' hallway and running my fingers across the little dents and smears from all the years of us growing up there. I remember looking at the wall of framed photos, us in collared shirts on an Easter at church, my hand stuck in a plastic egg, Nate smiling like he knew where the golden one was. I remember this grief, not just that he had told me not to help, but that he had done so in the name of support, as a paramedic would who murmurs nice things under his breath as he busts your rib to get to your heart. My voice belonged to another person by the time I called him. Do not talk, I said, and only managed to burst into tears on the second word. Just listen. There was a pause during which I could hear Tucker's collared jingle on his end. I heard your voicemail to Mom and Dad, I said. I read your email. I want to give you the grace of telling me, honestly, what you thought you were doing. Silence. Then the clearing of the lawyer's throat. Okay, he said. I know you're upset. I was trying to protect you. Never use that line on me again. My hands were shaking so hard I thought for a second I was going to drop the phone. Shielding me from what? You told me I would resent them if it didn't work out. You told me I would fail. You asked them to invest the money in your condo as if we're all some small business and you're the CFO deciding who's worth the investment. You're twisting it, he said, which he knew was my least favorite sentence in the entire world. They can't afford to have you crash and burn. I'm the one who's going to be left to pick up the pieces when you do. I'm not being a villain, I'm being the adult. It's worse than if you were a villain, I said to him. At least villains make a claim to it. You sat across from me and told me you believed in me while you were building a case to starve me out. He sighed, and I heard him sit down. I pictured him on his leather couch with a throw blanket at the precisely sloppy angle. You always take everything so personally, he said. I said you were impulsive. That is not an insult. That is just fact. I need to make the hard choices sometimes for our family. You are not my guardian. You're my brother. He got flinty then. You're being dramatic. You know damn well that if they loaned you money and you lost it, you would never forgive them. I wouldn't take a penny I couldn't repay, I said, and it was as though another person was speaking, an older version of me. I had a plan. I have a plan. And even if I didn't succeed, this isn't your decision to make, to play with their fear using your statistics. You could have told me. You could have said, I'm concerned about them. I don't think they should lend you money. I'm asking for their help in the spring. We could have had an even fight. But you had to be the hero twice. That's what this was. You wanted to save them from me and then have them save you. He was silent. Tucker was clawing the floorboards. I wiped my face across my sleeve and somehow got flour on my cheek again. I'm going to hang up, I said finally, because I couldn't stay in that room one more minute. Don't call me until you figured out why you turned love into war and then call it peace. I did that thing for a week where your brain is sitting on the couch and your body just keeps going. I worked. I responded to emails. I wrote check grease trap and call health inspector. Then I'd go home, sit on my kitchen floor, tie my hair into a lopsided bun, and stare at the sliver of sunlight that made it to my fridge around 4 in the afternoon like it was a promise from God. The quiet got a little sharp. The good tired wasn't good anymore and was empty. I startled every time my phone lit up with Nate, like it was a wasp beside my ear. Mom called and cried, telling me she hadn't realized how deep it had gone in. Dad texted, we can do 2K if it helps. Your mother is upset. I didn't want to take their money when it was like blood, and besides, I wanted to tip the whole world over a cliff and make a new one where love wasn't a business offer. The farmer's market emailed one morning. We have a last-minute vendor cancellation this Saturday with rain in the forecast, the manager emailed. Interested in a half table? Discounted rate. I was joking. I had tear-puffed eyes swollen like I'd been stung, and 5 dozen test recipes that no one but Marco and my coworkers had tried. My printer was out of ink, my business cards were a Canva file, and the last thing I was interested in doing was stand in front of strangers and be like, I made this with love, and have them be like, "Do you take Venmo?" and possibly mean it. I said yes. I paid the $45 fee because sometimes the choice is between staring your face into the sun or burrowing a hole in your kitchen and taking up residence. I cried while baking. It's not a metaphor. I literally cried into a bowl of powdered sugar at one moment and had to remake the glaze. I did 6 kinds of cookies, 2 cakes, the cardamom buns. I got labels printed at Staples and cut them with a kitchen scissor at a slight angle. I rented a community kitchen for the day and managed to burn 1 tray so severely it was funny, and I laughed that way that sounds like shattering. Marco loaded the car with me at 4:30 in the morning and kissed my forehead and didn't tell me I was being brave because he knows I don't need that word anymore. The market opened. The sky was gray and low. I set out my treats. I stood behind a half table with a sign that said quiet hours in lettering I knew was romantic to the point of near illegibility. The first woman who came by said, "Do you have anything not too sweet?" And I laughed because, lady, everything is sugar. Then she pointed at the lemon olive oil cake and said, "Actually, that." It took a year, it seemed, before the first $5 bill was in my hand. Then 30 minutes and a small group, then a line. The cake went first. One guy bought a box of cookies and came back to buy another since his wife won't trust that I'll save any. One teen girl told me that my gluten-free cookies tasted like not carrots, which I was counting as a victory. The rain came and yet people came. My cheeks hurt from smiling. I forgot to be alone. This is not a movie. There was no montage where I became a millionaire. I made $486 minus table fee. I lost $37 worth of winter gloves because I let a kid lick a buttercream spatula and her mom apologized first in English and then Spanish, and I told her don't worry in neither language properly. But I did stand there and do the thing without nobody's permission, and it changed something fundamental. The engine turned over. It did not roar, but it hummed. I came home from the market and slept 13 blissful hours like an animal. When I awoke, there was a message from Nate. "How was the bake sale?" he wanted to know. I stared at it for a bit. It wasn't mean, exactly. It was condescending in the way a pat on the head would be. I put my phone down. I made coffee. I showered. I put on real clothes. Then I responded to him. It wasn't a bake sale, I texted. It was my business. It would be there with or without you. Don't belittle it to make yourself feel better. He called. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message that started out, "I'm sorry you took it that way," and then turned into a sort of apology since he could tell I wasn't going to take the rope and assist him in unraveling it. I saw my parents a week later at a diner on Route 46. The pancakes came in a stack behind which I could hide. I told them I did not play the voicemail because shame is an awkward tool and I did not want to use it. I told them what I had heard and read. I told them how it felt. I told them I wasn't going to ask them for a loan anymore. The relationship had gone radioactive. I told them I loved them and I would pay them back for the lasagnas and the soccer cleats and the difference between the man I was and the man I turned out to be. Mom squeezed my hand so hard her knuckles went white. Dad looked older and guys don't like that. He said, "We thought we were doing the right thing." And I said, "I know." Then I said, "From now on, if you want to know what I'm going to do, ask me." Not Nate. It was like signing my name on the line for receipt of self. I didn't cut Nate out. I wish I had a cleaner finale for you, but life is a crooked picture frame you're forever straightening. We didn't talk much for a while. When he did show up, he showed up like a weather front, apologetic, then defensive, then apologetic again. At one point, in the corner of my kitchen while I was forming bread, he said to me, "I honestly thought I was protecting you," and he might have meant it, in the way people mean the stories they need in order to keep staring at themselves in the mirror. I told him, "You don't get to protect me from the life I desire because you're scared you'll need more someday." I told him I needed a boundary, and then I told him what it was. He looked like he'd sucked on a lemon. We went months without the friendly texts we used to send about nothing. I missed him occasionally like you miss a train you used to take even though it made you ill. The bakery grew the way plants grow when you finally stop drowning them and place them in a window. I grew slowly. Farmers markets turned into a weekly pop-up with a coffee shop that smelled like my grandparents' house. I rented a tiny commercial kitchen in the back of a print shop for $400 a month. I found a used mixer that sounded like an airplane and just prayed it would never actually take flight. I got inspected and passed. I hired my cousin to work Saturdays. ABC7 featured a little segment of local makers, and I tried not to vomit on live TV. I was in my tiny kitchen at 4 in the morning, and I was cracking eggs into a bowl, and I realized I wasn't waiting for anyone to give permission for my life anymore. I cried a little because it had been a filthy road. The pain didn't get rinsed away just because I made cake. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't rot all at once. It forms in areas you still keep finding. I had to go back and review 1,000 little memories and resize them to their proper proportions. Nate swung by the market that morning. He bought a cinnamon roll and paid with cash. He lingered over my table like a father at a dance. "You were right," he said at last, rubbing at a mark on the table that wasn't there. I was scared. For them. For me. For you. And I wanted to get my house. I'm not proud of the way I tried to do it. I nodded. "Thank you," I said, since folks will tell you forgiveness is as simple as a finger snap, but really it is more like working dough. It's push and fold, until the structure relaxes. I'll visit your house someday, if I feel like it. And if I do, it will be because you invited me honestly, not because you said you were saving me from a staircase. He half laughed, half winsomed. We're better now, not the way we were, and maybe that's a gift. I don't give him the keys to my confidence. He doesn't give me his plans and ask me to prettify them. We're siblings in the real sense, which is to say we love each other and try not to be each other's cage. There's that cliche that everyone uses. Sorry, I said no cliches, but hear me out, family is everything. I have discovered that it's not so. Family is something. It can be strong, loving, loyal, cruel, and family can be wrong. The story that I was telling myself at the beginning was that I needed my family's money to start life. The story that I tell you now is that I had to start living so that I could find out which of my relatives could come there with me. Here is what I know for sure, not because a TED Talk told me, but because my hands can feel it. Fake support is worse than none at all. It has you doubting your own eyes. It says to wait for another person's permission when the only one you need to live with is you. If someone says they're with you and then just stands in the doorway silently, believe their feet, not their mouth. I also know you can survive it. You can sit on your kitchen floor with flour on your pants and feel like such a stupid little girl for believing a big boy, and then get up and set out a half table and sell lemon cake to a woman who says, "This tastes like summer." You can keep your boundary and still be kind to your brother's wife with cinnamon rolls when she has a baby. You can rebuild with your parents on different terms, ones that honor the adult you've become, not the child who asked for permission. And you can wake up at 4 in the morning, feel that gentle hum, and know the life you're building is yours. Not borrowed, not permitted, not saved for later. Yours. If you've had anything like that happen, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if this story resonated with you even a little bit, don't be shy about liking, subscribing, and hitting that bell.